narcissist doesn't fear your anger. They aren't intimidated by your criticism, nor do they recoil at the threat of being exposed. In truth, they thrive on it. Because for them, any reaction, whether it's love, hate, pain, or rage, signals one undeniable truth. They still occupy space in your mind. Every tear you shed, each message you send, and every second you spend fixated on them serves as evidence. Fuel, proof that their distorted sense of self still holds power over you. But eventually, something shifts. The tears stop, the rage subsides, the obsession dissolves. You no longer yearn for an apology. You stop clinging to closure, and you cease needing them to acknowledge the wreckage they left behind. What replaces all that emotion is something far more unsettling to the narcissist: nothing. And in that nothingness, what might look like peace to an outsider, a quiet, seismic event unfolds within the narcissist's world. They begin to unravel. To the narcissist, your silence isn't simply a matter of no contact. It's a vacuum, a profound void where they once held dominion. It signifies the collapse of control, the death of their influence, because they cannot manipulate someone who has gone emotionally numb. They can't provoke someone who no longer holds hope. They can't dominate someone who has finally stepped outside the script. You're not defending yourself. You're not trying to prove your strength. You're not even trying to win anymore. And that, above all else, is what devastates them. Not because they loved you, but because they've lost the ability to matter to you. Not because your silence is a tactic, but because there's truly, genuinely nothing left to say. To a narcissist, your inner peace is a fatal blow. In this video, we'll explore what happens when a narcissist realizes you no longer care. From their descent into denial, to aggressive attempts at re-establishing control, to full-blown rage, smear campaigns, and ultimately a collapse of identity will expose every psychological layer of their breakdown. By the end, you'll understand this fundamental truth. You never needed revenge to win. You only needed to heal enough to stop playing their game. Stage 1. Denial. They're just upset. They'll come back. When the narcissist first realizes you've stopped texting, stopped reacting, and pulled away from their life in a way you never did before, their initial response isn't grief or sadness. It's denial. In their distorted worldview, it's inconceivable that you've genuinely moved on. They're far too used to you returning, offering apologies, softening your stance, or at least resisting their detachment. So their first defense mechanism isn't to accept the loss. It's to twist the truth and rewrite the narrative, all to keep their illusion of control intact. They convince themselves you're angry, that you're punishing them, that you're waiting to be chased. For them, your silence can't possibly mean closure. It has to mean strategy. They see it as a calculated move in the emotional game. They still believe you're playing with them. In this phase, they begin testing for signs of life, sending subtle messages, posting vague quotes or photos, maybe even dropping casual check-ins. Perhaps they use a mutual friend to ask how you're doing, or happen to appear somewhere they know you'll be. But none of this is out of concern. It's all about seeing if they still hold influence. And when you don't react, not with anger, not with curiosity, not with sadness, that illusion begins to splinter. Doubt creeps in. They wonder, wait, is this actually real? They're not ready to face a world where your emotional investment is truly gone. So they double down. More signals, more baited traps. But you stay silent. Not to provoke, but because you're honestly, genuinely free. And in that stillness, the narcissist begins to feel the ground shift beneath them. No more mirroring, no more validation, no more familiar push and pull dynamics. This is about more than the end of a relationship. It's the end of their stage, the one where they were always center spotlight, and they're not prepared to leave it behind. Stage 2. Reasserting control. I can get them back if I just try harder. When denial starts to fall apart, the narcissist doesn't sit quietly with that truth. Instead, they leap into their next phase, reasserting control. At this point, they abandon the vague tactics and escalate to deliberately calculated efforts designed to pull you back into their sphere. They view your emotional detachment not as independence, but as a power vacuum, one they must rush to fill. Now they come with heartfelt messages, familiar inside jokes, emotional appeals. They may suddenly recall old memories or make dramatic proclamations about how much they've changed. It's not about growth. It's about desperation. To the narcissist, Love has never been about connection. It has always been about control. When you stayed, they could pull strings. When you were angry, they knew how to twist that into guilt. When you fought back, they could turn the tables and make you the aggressor. But now you don't react at all. And that's what disrupts the loop they once ruled over. So they panic. They swing from sweet to spiteful in moments. One day they're pouring out love. The next, they're lashing out and accusing you of being cruel or cold-hearted. But underneath it all, they're searching for one thing: a crack in your calm. Just a sliver of emotional response to prove you still care. They don't need you to come back because they love you. They need you to respond because in their mind, reaction means relevance. Without it, they begin to unravel. The calmer you remain, the more chaotic they become. The quieter you are, the louder their internal panic grows. They may post photos with someone new, try to show how happy they are, or flaunt their growth online. But behind it all, they're grasping at straws. They know their old tactics don't work anymore. And nothing terrifies them more than losing the one thing that made them feel powerful: your emotional reflection. Because this time, you didn't just go silent. You let go. And in doing so, you didn't just end the relationship. You dismantled the very foundation of their self-worth. Stage 3. Rage. How dare they not need me? When every effort to pull you back, regain a hold over you, or manipulate your emotions fails, the narcissist is left with no more strategies to try. And it's here, when control has completely slipped through their fingers, that the mask begins to fall away, revealing something rawer underneath: rage. But this isn't sorrow, and it's not the kind of hurt that comes from a broken heart. This is anger rooted in entitlement. This is the fury of someone who truly believed that, no matter what, they would always have power over you. Now, as they're forced to confront the reality that you've genuinely moved on, that you're not falling apart without them, that you're not chasing or reacting, their internal world starts to fracture. In the narcissist's mind, the question isn't, "Why did you leave?" but rather, "How dare you leave like that? How dare you walk away without begging? How dare you stay silent and not crumble? How dare you live fully, peacefully, without them?" Your independence to them is an act of betrayal. It doesn't just reject their presence, it dismantles the illusion of control they've spent so long building. And the rage that erupts isn't always the loud kind. In fact, it's often silent, insidious, and covert. Many narcissists won't explode in front of others. They won't scream or throw dramatic fits in public. Instead, they'll twist truths behind the scenes. They start spreading rumors. They begin distorting the story, painting themselves as the one who was left behind, the misunderstood victim of your supposed cruelty. In this narrative, you're the cold one. You're the unstable one. You're the reason everything fell apart. This isn't about love or even about you. It's about preserving what little self-image they still have. They're no longer trying to win you back. They're now trying to protect their own ego from collapsing entirely. If they can't control how you feel anymore, they'll try to control how others see you. Because in their world, being irrelevant is worse than being hated. So they do everything in their power to be seen as the wounded one. If they can't be loved, they'll settle for pity. If they can't be admired, they'll accept being misunderstood, so long as it keeps them in the spotlight. But even with all that external manipulation, even with every lie they tell others, there's one thing they can't escape: your silence. Because no matter what stories they invent, no matter how many accusations they throw your way, the fact that you no longer respond, no defense, no confrontation, no emotional retaliation, is what eats away at them the most. They used to be able to get under your skin with a single word, a cold glance, or a message designed to provoke. Now, you don't even blink. And to a narcissist, that absence isn't just painful, it's annihilating. It's not that you're not there. It's that, emotionally, they've ceased to exist in your world. And that is when it finally begins to sink in. You've done the one thing they never thought possible. You've truly let go. Stage 4. Rewriting the narrative. I'll turn them into the villain. When the narcissist realizes that their rage isn't working, when your silence refuses to ignite, when your absence still doesn't result in a return, they don't surrender. Instead, they pivot. They switch tactics once again. If they can't reach you through your emotions, they'll try to regain control through the story. So begins their next phase, rewriting the narrative. If they can't influence your thoughts, they'll manipulate how others perceive you. They'll reshape the past, constructing a version of events where they were the noble victim and you were the one who acted cold, ungrateful, or inexplicably cruel. To them, the truth isn't relevant. What matters is protecting their ego, preserving an image of themselves that doesn't involve failure or loss. Since you didn't give them a dramatic, emotionally satisfying ending, no begging, no confrontation, no grand apology, they write their own version, one that absolves them of all wrongdoing. You may have loved them deeply. You might have forgiven again and again. You likely tried to repair things that were never your fault to begin with. But in their retelling, none of that matters. In their new version of the story, you're the one who just disappeared. You're the unstable one. You're the controlling one, or worse, a manipulator in disguise who weaponized kindness. Every expression of care, every moment you stayed, every tear you cried, they'll twist it. All of it becomes evidence in their case against you. Not because they want revenge, not because they even care about your reputation. They do it to protect a self-image that is falling apart piece by piece. The thought that you simply had enough, that you left because you were drained and done, is one they cannot tolerate. The idea that you are living your life, quietly, peacefully, without speaking their name, is too much for them to bear, because that would mean they're no longer important. And for a narcissist, being forgotten is worse than being hated. So they invent a void. They fill it with falsehoods, with distorted reflections, with twisted memories, and in that version, you're the villain. Because admitting the truth, that they were loved and still destroyed it, would mean facing something far more terrifying, that they were never the person you believed in. But what they didn't expect is this: you don't defend yourself anymore. You don't step in to correct the story. You don't clarify what really happened. You don't waste energy clearing up the mess they made of your name. And that silence, that quiet refusal to engage, it devastates them more than any fight ever could. Because when you no longer feel the need to protect your image, when you've stopped trying to prove your worth, stopped engaging in their reality, you've walked off the stage completely. And no matter how many stories they tell, no matter how many roles they create for you in their script, one thing remains true. They can't recreate the reflection you once gave them. No one else has ever seen them as clearly as you did, and now they've lost that mirror for good. Stage 5, emptiness. Without a reflection, who am I? After exhausting every strategy, after denial has failed, after trying to reassert control has backfired, after rage has been ignored, and the rewritten narrative hasn't drawn you back, the narcissist is finally confronted with the one thing they've spent their entire life avoiding: emptiness. There's no one left to provoke, no emotional energy left to drain, no gaze to manipulate, no reaction to feed off of. The supply they depended on has been cut off entirely, and what remains is not just quiet, it's a deafening, unfillable void. At their core, narcissists don't form identity in the way emotionally whole individuals do. They don't cultivate self-worth from within. Instead, they construct their sense of self externally, through the eyes of others, through constant attention, through admiration, or even conflict. To them, every reaction, whether it's affection, pain, or contempt, means one thing: they still matter to someone. But when you no longer look their way, not with love, not with anger, not even with the cold detachment of indifference, they begin to feel as though they are disappearing. Not metaphorically, but psychologically. It's not simply heartbreak they're feeling. It's an unraveling. It's a full-on identity collapse. They start to ask themselves, who am I? But it's not a reflective, soul-searching question. It's a desperate, terrifying void of a thought. Because they don't know. They never truly did. Their entire self-concept was built on reflection. He's charming. She's powerful. They're admirable. All descriptions given by others. All masks worn based on the attention they received. But now, with you gone, and not just physically gone, but emotionally absent, the mirror is shattered. The one person who saw through the mask and still tried to reach the real self underneath is no longer there to see them at all. So what do? They search for anything, for anyone, someone to compare you to, someone they can parade in front of others. But even that doesn't soothe the ache. Because in those new eyes, they aren't fully seen. They're only performing. And every script they once performed flawlessly, seduction, victimhood, success, vulnerability, now plays out on an empty stage, devoid of an audience that ever truly mattered. In the stillness, they begin to feel something foreign, something that lacks a name in their vocabulary: non-existence. It's a cold, drifting, hollow sensation, as if every persona they've ever worn has disintegrated, and underneath there is nothing but confusion. An emptiness so complete it scares even them, not because they miss you, but because without you, they no longer know who they are. And in the eyes of someone new, no matter how quickly found or easily impressed, they are just a recycled version of themselves, a flat character in a performance they've played too many times. There's no depth, no connection, nothing real. And that realization cuts deeper than anything else. Because it's not just that you left, it's that you saw them. You saw all of them. The facade, the cracks beneath it, and even the small, frightened self hiding at the core. And still, you tried to love them. And yet, they still drove you away. This void they're drowning in cannot be filled. Not with compliments, not with possessions, not with a new person. Because the absence haunting them isn't external. It isn't about who's beside them. It's about the fact that they've never stood firmly within themselves. Stage 6. The search for a replacement. I need someone to fill this void. When the narcissist can no longer receive validation, emotion, or identity through you, they don't pause to reflect inward. They don't take time to discover who they are without an audience. Instead, they leap into a desperate search for someone else. Anyone who can once again act as a mirror. The hunt begins quickly, and it's frantic. But don't be misled. This is not healing. It isn't growth. It's not a sign that they've moved on. In fact, the urgency to find someone new is the clearest evidence of how broken they truly are inside. Their new partner isn't chosen with care or love. That person is selected because in that moment, they are capable of temporarily reflecting back the narcissist's ego, the same ego you once helped support. They dive into another relationship, often with lightning speed. A whirlwind romance, dramatic declarations, grand gestures, and picture-perfect snapshots appear as if from nowhere. But none of it is real. Not truly. Because this performance isn't just for the benefit of their new partner. It's a performance meant to convince themselves, I still matter, I'm still desirable, I'm still in control. Deep down though, even they know it's hollow. Because you, the one who truly saw them, no longer believe in the act. You no longer validate their fantasy. And despite their best efforts to reenact the same story, they can't recreate the depth they once had with you. You weren't just another person. You weren't merely a source of supply. You were the one who looked past the roles, who recognized the person beneath the mask. You showed patience. You believed they could change. You gave second chances. And most importantly, you touched the fragile hidden part of them, the part they tried to bury but secretly wanted someone to see. And when you left, you didn't just walk away from the relationship. You took with you the one experience where they were seen and still accepted. No new partner, no matter how agreeable or easily impressed, can give them that again. This new person may be easier to control, easier to impress, less likely to confront the truth, but they don't see the fractures. They don't notice the cracks. They aren't looking closely enough. And it's exactly that lack of depth, that surface-level reflection, that begins to haunt the narcissist. With every new interaction, with every moment of forced joy, they are reminded of you. Not because they want you back out of love, but because you were the only person who reflected their brokenness clearly and still stayed, for a time. That's why they can't let go entirely. Why they check your social media. Why your name comes up in conversations without context. Why they mention you vaguely without fully admitting what you meant to them. No one has replaced you, because no one else ever truly saw them. And that reality becomes both a fixation and a quiet torment. So they continue the cycle, jumping from one relationship to the next, repeating the same lines, recreating the same scenes. But the more they chase, the more breathless they become. Because nothing compares. Nothing mirrors them back the way you once did. And that truth gnaws at them. No one else has ever made them feel as exposed and yet still accepted. And now, no one is left who's even willing to look. Stage 7. Ego collapse. I don't know who I am anymore. After the chasing, the attempts at control, the bursts of rage, and the desperate efforts to rewrite the story or replace you with someone new, the narcissist eventually arrives at the stage they were least prepared for: ego collapse. This isn't just another fleeting emotion or surface-level outburst. This is a complete unraveling, an inner breakdown they don't have the tools to explain, and certainly no capacity to process. Because beneath the masks, beneath the performances and the carefully crafted personas, there was never a stable self to begin with. Since early on, they learned not to build an identity through inner reflection, but through reaction, by shaping themselves based on how others responded to them. Their sense of value wasn't cultivated within, it was built externally, through manipulation, pleasing, controlling, seducing. They were taught, implicitly or explicitly, that to be someone meant gaining power over someone else's perception. And now, with you gone, with your gaze no longer feeding their image, they are left with a question that terrifies them more than abandonment ever could. Who am I, if there is no one left to influence? Inside, their world becomes barren. Like a dark room without mirrors, without windows, without a single beam of light. All the masks they once wore, the charming partner, the pitiful victim, the high-achieving success story, are now useless without someone to validate them. What remains is an emotional freefall, and they don't know how to stop it. Like a child lost in a storm, they begin to panic, but lack the emotional maturity or inner language to even name what they're experiencing. You might still see them smiling in public, showing up for work, posting cheerful updates, but behind their eyes, the emptiness has begun to seep through. Their behavior becomes more erratic, their sleep becomes fragmented, anxiety attacks creep in, and a quiet sense of dread follows them everywhere. Eventually, they start not recognizing their own reflection, not in the physical mirror, but in the emotional sense. They look at themselves and feel nothing. No identity, no meaning, no anchor. This isn't just sadness, it's a psychological collapse. But here's the tragedy: they won't reach out for help. They can't. The very world they constructed was built on the illusion of strength, control, and superiority. Admitting they're in pain, that they've been internally shattered, would require a self that's strong enough to admit vulnerability. But they never built that self. So they can't ask for help. They won't say, "I'm not okay." They'll keep pretending, keep posturing, keep wearing the mask, even as it cracks beneath the weight of their own denial. And here's the part that cuts the deepest. The pain they now carry doesn't come from your absence directly. It comes from the emptiness that your presence once covered. The pain of losing the only person who ever tried to reach the real them, the version they never had the courage to become. Now, they seek your gaze in every room and never find it. They search for the depth of your love in people who only ever reflect the surface. And they ache, not because you left, but because you were real. And real is what they lost. The bitter truth finally hits them. Not loudly, not suddenly, but like a slow-burning truth they can no longer deny. It wasn't just that they lost you, it's that they never really had themselves to begin with. Stage 8, the quiet ending. You moved on, and they remained stuck. When every tactic has failed, when all the manipulations have lost their effect, when every mask has fallen off, and no one remains to play the parts, they are finally left standing at a moment they never saw coming. The quiet ending. This is not the dramatic farewell they envisioned. There's no final confrontation, no emotional showdown, no explosive exchange that leaves the door cracked open for one last return. It's simply silence. But not their kind of silence, the calculated kind designed to provoke a reaction. No, this silence is different. It's the echo of someone who has truly left. What they face now is a world without you. You, the person who once brought light into the dark corners of their fractured self. The one who forgave them over and over. The one who saw glimpses of who they could be and held on to that hope longer than you should have. You're no longer in the audience. You're no longer reacting, no longer hoping, no longer fighting for an explanation or an ending. And your absence, true absence, becomes deafening to them. But this quiet doesn't bring them peace. It's not the stillness of healing. It's not clarity or closure, it's stagnation. It's the same loop, spinning on repeat. Manipulation, anger, blame, reaching out, spinning lies. Only this time, you are no longer in the loop. You've stepped outside of it, and they can't touch you anymore. You walked away not to hurt them, not to prove anything, but because your heart finally understood. Holding on any longer would mean losing yourself. And so you left with pain, yes, but also with a sense of truth. You began rebuilding, not with rage, not with revenge, not by needing them to understand, but simply by choosing yourself. You chose to begin again with dignity. Meanwhile, they remain where they've always been, stuck. Caught in the narrative they've rehearsed their whole life, repeating the same lines, playing the same roles, still hoping anyone will give them the reaction they once got from you. But it never comes, because you're no longer waiting. You're not sending texts. You're not defending yourself. You're not checking in. You're not responding to the distorted story they might be spinning behind your back. And this, more than anything, is what wounds them the most. Not a fight, not your anger, not even your words. It's your silence. Not the silence of manipulation, but the silence of someone who is truly, finally free. You're not trying to reclaim your reputation. You're not rushing in to fix the lies they've told. Because deep down, you've discovered something far more powerful than their validation, your own peace. And in that peace, you found your answer. They, on the other hand, feel the weight of what they've lost. Not just a person, but the one person who saw the truth behind their mask and still offered love. And whether they admit it or not, that loss becomes their quiet torment. But you no longer need them to understand. You don't require a final apology. You don't crave justice or acknowledgement, because you've stopped playing their game. You've walked away from their stage and taken your light with you. They might still smile in front of others. They might post carefully curated photos, speak about new successes, or pretend they've evolved. But none of it touches the truth. Deep down, they are still trapped in the same story, still playing a part in a show where the only audience that ever mattered has exited the theater. And the stage will never be lit again. Because here's what they never understood. You don't defeat a narcissist through clever words or emotional power struggles. You don't heal by making them see what they did. You don't win by dragging them into the light. The real victory was always in the quiet. It happened the moment you decided to walk away without looking back. Not because you hated them, not out of bitterness, but because you finally outgrew the very story they kept trying to trap you in. You once loved them with everything you had. You forgave more than they ever earned. You believed, maybe too long, that if you were kind enough, patient enough, loving enough, they would change. But eventually, you saw the truth no one could deny. You can't heal someone who refuses to face their own reflection. And in that moment, you made the most powerful choice of all. You let go without waiting for a reply. In their world, that is collapse. In yours, it is rebirth. You're no longer caught in someone else's emotions. You no longer base your worth on their approval. You stepped outside their script into your own light. And for the first time, your story belongs to you. Maybe they'll never understand why you left. Maybe they'll never face the truth you once offered, but none of that matters anymore. Because you don't need closure from someone who only ever saw you through the lens of control. Now, you don't need to prove a thing. You don't need to be right. You don't even need to be remembered. Because the peace you've built within yourself is more powerful than anything they ever gave or ever took. You walked out of the dark, scarred but stronger, and kept going. And if you ever find yourself wondering whether you did the right thing, just remember this. The narcissist lost the moment they tried to control someone who was always meant to be free. What are your views on this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I will personally read all of your comments. And if you seriously want to level up in life, don't forget to show some love by hitting the like and subscribe button. Stay strong. Until next time.